Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We are learning Mishnah's Kesubos, Perek Tes, Chapter 9, Mishnah Beis, Mishnah 2. Okay, quick introduction. When someone owes money and dies, his lenders may take his land as payment. However, movable objects such as money, clothing, and utensils must be left for his heirs, may not be taken. So basically, the person dies, his land was pledged towards these creditors in his lifetime. So when he dies, they have a right to collect it. But when it comes to movable objects, cash, utensils, clothing, that goes to the heirs. That goes to the children, whoever's doing that, whoever the heirs are. Okay. Now our Mishnah is going to be in a very interesting, unique, in a very interesting case, and that a case where maybe, or a case where the Mishnah discusses that maybe there is the ability for movable objects to be collected by the creditors. So Misha Mace, someone who died, Viniach Isha Ubal Choy V'Yarshin, and he left behind a wife who wants to collect her ksuba, a Baal Choy, a creditor who wants to collect his debt, V'Yarshin, and heirs. Okay? V'Hayaloi Pikadain Oymilva B'Yaracherim. And the case is that he had a pikadon. That means he had an object that's being watched by someone. He had deposited an object by someone to watch for him. Or mil means, or that a loan, he had a deposit or a loan in someone else's hands. Okay? That means that either he had left an object by someone to watch, or someone else owed him money. So basically, this is not land. This is an immovable object, or the equivalent of a movable object by someone else. And now the question is, who of these three people that we're talking about, the wife wants to collect her ksuba, the creditor wants to collect his debt, and the heirs who just want to take their inheritance, who is going to get that? Now, these are movable objects. Typically, we say that movable objects belong to the heirs. They should be the ones that would collect a movable object. The same thing, they would be the one who would inherit the debt that the father had, the debt that this person had to their father, that somebody else had to their father. But now the Mishnah is going to discuss that maybe it wouldn't be that way in this case. Because again, in this case, we're talking about there are other people who had rights to collect from the father, the wife her ksuba, and this other person who the father owed money to. Rabbi Tarfon says, "Yinasnu l'koishel shebehen." These the pikadon, the object that was being watched, or the debt that was to the father, shall be given to the weakest one amongst them. Of these three people that we're talking about, the wife for the ksuba, the creditor for the loan, and the heirs. Rabbi Tarfon says, you know who gets it? The weakest one gets it. Now, what does the weakest one mean exactly? Who is the weakest one? So let me read you here. Let me read you here from the Gemara. For you from the notes from the Gemara. The Gemara says two opinions, and the Bartanur brings this down. Two opinions as to who is considered the weakest. So the first opinion is like this: whichever one's document, the ksuba or the loan document, is dated later, whoever has the later dated document is considered the weaker one. Why? Because as a rule, someone who is owed a debt that is recorded in a document can take the defendant's land as payment, even if the defendant has sold the land, in which case the claimant seizes it from the buyer. Right? We know that if I owe you money and my land was therefore pledged to you, if you sell it, I can go over to the buyer and say, sorry, it was pledged to me before you bought it. But that can only happen if the obligation is recorded in a document. One's right to take land, however, is limited to land that was sold after the date of the document, right? It has to be in a document, and you only have right to take away land bought by somebody else if it was bought after the date of the document. Therefore, meaning after the date of the obligation, of the debt. Therefore, the earlier date of one's the earlier the date of one's document, the more likely it is that he'll collect payments. The earlier document means that anything that was sold already back from that time of the document he's going to be able to collect. If his document is later, right, then he only has his chance to collect from things that were sold at a later time. If I have an earlier document, then basically anything sold from that earlier time and on, I have a right to collect. The later document only has the ability to do so from its later time. So the one with the later document is at a disadvantage. In our case then, if the wife's ksuba is dated later than the loan document, she is weaker and we award the item or money to her. And if the loan document is dated later than the ksuba, the lender is weaker and he gets the item or money. Follow that? That's what the Gemara is saying. The weaker one is the one who has less ability to collect his debt from the land of the person who owed him money, and it was pledged to him from the point of the time of the document. So the earlier my document, the more ability I have to collect what he sells from that earlier time. It means I come first. It means, meaning between me and him, I come first because mine was earlier. It means that there's a possibility that he may have sold a number of lands, right, at different points of time. And since my document is earlier, I have more options of collecting my debt. So the one with the later time is the weaker one. So if the IOU is dated earlier than the ksuba, then the lady is the weaker one. We give her the money. We give her the deposit money. We give her that money that was kept deposited by someone to watch. We give her, she has the right to collect the debt that somebody owed her late husband. And if it comes out that she got married before this loan was, before the husband borrowed the money, the IOU is dated later than the woman's ksuba. So then we give these things to the creditor. Because in effect, he's considered the weaker one. The one with the later dated document is considered the weaker one.
That's not. There's a first mortgage, second mortgage, and a third mortgage.
I know what you mean by that.
Just the opposite.
I know what you mean by that. The point is that if I borrowed money from you, and we wrote an IOU, an IOU, the document. So anything now from this point the document on is pledged to you. Whatever I sell, you can actually, if you don't get money from me, you never get payment from me, you can go to the buyer and say, sorry, I had free rights to that land. And that can happen to numerous pieces of land. Because each time, all his land is pledged. So now, if I have the earlier document and someone else the later document, I come first. And also, that's the way it works. That's the way halacha works. I come first. If I have the earlier pledge, I go first. And then you have, then I think also there's the point that the earlier document means that depending on how many lands he has sold over time, I'll have more lands to collect from than the other person does.
All right.
So that's according to Rabbi Tarfon's opinion. The weaker one is the one who gets it. Rabbi Akiva says, Ein merachamin b'din. We do not act merciful in deciding the law. It was way saying to Rabbi Tarfon, you're giving it to the weaker one. It's very nice to have Rachmanis, but this is not the place for it. When you're talking about deciding the law, Rachmanis, mercy does not play a role. Rather, Ela Yinasnu La Yarshin. It's the heirs who get these things. Shekulan Tzrich and Shavua, because the other ones need to make an oath. Ve'nayarshin Tzrich and Shavua, while the heirs do not need to make an oath. That means like this. If a person, let's say, passes away, and someone comes and he wants to claim and say, the father owed me money, I'm collecting this land, which means I'm taking it away from the heirs. The Rabbanan, the sages, instituted, I have to swear that the money is owed to me. The Yarshim, the heirs, they don't necessarily know what's going on in their father's business dealings. They don't know what's going on. And therefore, the Chacham, the sages said, if you're going to collect, you have to swear to the fact you have the right to collect. Because that's our way of basically confirming, knowing for sure that it's true, that you're not just taking advantage of these heirs, but that really the money is owed to you. that is going to be true of whether we're talking about a creditor or even a woman who wants to collect her ksuba. She wants to collect her ksuba after the husband dies and say, I'm taking this piece of land. We say to her, maybe your husband already gave you money before. It's possible. It's possible he already gave you money before for the ksuba. We don't know, and they don't know. So you're going to have to go ahead and swear to the fact that you have not been paid your ksuba. All right, so it comes out like this. We've got this situation where there is these monies, okay? And we're trying to figure out who gets these monies. Now, for the creditor to get the money, he's got to swear. And until he swears, he has no right to collect it. For the woman to collect her ksuba, she has to swear. Before she swears, she can't collect it. The heirs, they don't have to swear. They're the heirs. We know for sure they have some kind of right to this money. We know for sure they have some kind of claim to this money. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva says, being basically that they for sure have rights to this money. The other ones, until we hear a shvuah, we don't know whether they have the right to the money. So basically, they have a certain claim, a certain right to the money before the other ones do. And therefore, they get it. So you follow that? Therefore, they get it. Being that their right to the money is clear to us before the rights of the other ones. Therefore, being that they have the right for this money before the other ones do. Therefore, Rabbi Akiva says they get the money because they had the first rights to it.
So you had the two people were swearing. How do you know which one has the priority?
Well, then you'll check their documents and see who has the earlier document. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
When there's